UNESCO calls Malta's Hypogeum a prehistoric cemetery. That's the official line. In 2017, Rupert Till published peer-reviewed measurements showing the oracle room amplifies specific frequencies by more than 7 decibels with a 16-second reverberation time. That data is published, and not one word of the official classification has changed. The biggest lie about this underground temple is an ancient conspiracy. It's what happens when institutions stop reading their own science. UNESCO's official description calls the Saflieni Hypogeum an underground cemetery, echoing a burial count that's been repeated for over a century. The number, 7,000, appears everywhere. Guidebooks, travel blogs, even the Heritage Malta website. But the foundation for this claim is surprisingly thin. The figure traces back to 1910 when Sir Themistocles Zamet, Malta's first director of museums, tried to estimate how many people were buried in the Hypogeum. Zamet examined a 3 cubic meter block of densely packed bones, counted the fragments, and then multiplied that sample across the estimated volume of the entire site. His math produced the now famous 7,000. But he was working with a disturbed deposit, not a systematic excavation, and his field notes reveal that bones were already mixed, incomplete, and missing context. Modern osteological work tells a different story. In 1992, Kasser and Goder published a peer-reviewed study using a method that is standard in archaeology, count the right patella, that is the kneecaps, since each person has only one. Their survey, based on the actual inventory at the National Museum of Archaeology, found around 120 right patella, and that is a minimum number of individuals, and it is not even close to 7,000. Heritage Malta's own technical reports now reference this lower figure, but the public-facing narrative has not changed. The problem runs deeper than a misquoted statistic. The original field notebooks from Father Manuel Magri, who led the first systematic excavation starting in 1903, are lost. Only partial correspondence and secondary summaries survive. Without those primary records, and with Zamet's extrapolation based on a single disturbed deposit, the 7,000 figure rests on shaky ground. Yet it remains the headline number in official descriptions, shaping how the world understands the Hypogeum. The gap between the physical evidence and the institutional story is not a minor detail. It is the starting point for everything that follows. Inside the Hypogeum, the story is written not in bone, but in stone. The structure itself resists the idea of a simple burial vault. Massive trilithon doorways, 2 upright slabs topped by a third, frame the entrances between chambers, echoing the monumental gateways found at Malta's surface temples. These thresholds are architectural statements, not mere passageways. They lead deeper toward the so-called Holy of Holies, a chamber carved with a recessed altar-like platform set apart from the rest by a narrow, controlled approach. No ordinary tomb would require such theatrical staging. Above, the ceiling is alive with red ochre spirals and looping motifs, painted in a pigment that still clings to the limestone after more than 5,000 years. These swirling forms are unique in Maltese prehistory. They do not mark individual graves or commemorate the dead. Instead, they crown the central chamber, an area with no direct evidence of burials, suggesting a space meant for gathering, not for mourning. Then there is the oracle room, a small side chamber with a niche carved into the wall. This niche is not just decorative. Its dimensions and placement create a focused acoustic effect. A person speaking or chanting into it produces a deep, resonant echo that fills the main hall. The oracle room's design amplifies sound in a way that has been measured, not just imagined. These features, trilithon thresholds, the Holy of Holies, spiral art, and the oracle niche fit awkwardly within the framework of a cemetery. They point instead to a more complex purpose, a space engineered for ritual, performance, and the manipulation of sound. In 2014, Rupert Till arrived at the Hypogeum with a portable sound lab and a question. Could the site's strange echoes be measured, not just imagined? Using calibrated Sennheiser condenser microphones and a JBL loudspeaker, Till mapped sound pressure levels at regular intervals throughout the oracle room, the Holy of Holies, and along the trilithon thresholds. The protocol was rigorous. Each microphone was certified to IEC 61672 2-1 Class 1 standards, and every sweep was repeated, averaged, and background noise subtracted according to the ISO 3382 guideline. What emerged from this careful process was not a vague impression, but a hard number, a 7.2 decibel increase in sound pressure level as a test tone traveled roughly 10 meters through the heart of the Hypogeum. Outdoors, the same signal would drop by about 12 decibels over that distance. Here it rose. That is a net deviation of 19 decibels, 19 times the just noticeable difference for human hearing. In terms of acoustic pressure, that is a 2.2 times amplification, not the 7 times louder claim that has been repeated in headlines and social media. The effect was not random. Resonance peaks clustered at 41 Hz, 72 Hz, and 76 Hz. Deep bass notes that align with the chamber's geometry, and the reverberation time at 63 Hz was 16 seconds. That is not just long for stone, it is cathedral scale, far beyond anything found in typical burial caves. Every number in Till's 2017 antiquity paper is traceable to his field logs and calibration files, archived at the University of Malta. No speculation, no folklore, just physics, measured and published. Yet this data rarely appears in official site descriptions or mainstream guidebooks. Instead, the public is left with myths about 7 times louder sound and a single mystical frequency. The reality is stranger. The Hypogeum is engineered to amplify and sustain sound in ways that are both quantifiable and deliberate, and the evidence has been available in peer-reviewed literature for years. In 2008, Dr. Ian Cook at UCLA set out to test a bold claim. Could a specific low-frequency sound, played in a controlled setting, measurably alter brain activity? Cook's team brought 30 adults into the lab, placed electroencephalogram electrodes, EEG, across their scalps, and exposed them to pure tones from 90 to 130 Hz. At 110 Hz, the data seemed to show something unusual. A significant drop in left temporal lobe activity and a shift in prefrontal brain waves toward the right hemisphere. The paper published in Time and Mind called these changes statistically significant, suggesting a move away from language processing and toward a more intuitive, emotional state. But Cook and his co-authors were careful. They described their findings as preliminary, a pilot in need of replication, and pointed out that the experiment was run in a lab, not inside the Hypogeum itself. A follow-up came 6 years later when a group at the University of Trieste tried to repeat the effect with a new sample of 28 participants. This time, the results did not hold. There was no clear suppression in the left temporal region and no reliable shift in prefrontal asymmetry at 110 Hz. The Trieste team concluded that the original finding might have been a fluke of sample size or lab conditions. Since then, no major neuroscience group has published a large-scale, site-specific replication. The idea that the Hypogeum's resonance can reliably shift brain states remains unproven, tantalizing but unresolved. The gap is glaring: a single pilot, a failed replication, and a field that has moved on without closing the loop. For all the headlines about mind-altering sound, the hard evidence stops here. Acoustic anomalies like those in Malta's Hypogeum are not an isolated curiosity. In 1996, Robert John, Paul Devereaux, and Michael Ibeson published a study in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America after testing 6 Neolithic sites in Britain and Ireland, including Newgrange and Loughcrew. Each site displayed pronounced resonance bands between 95 and 120 Hz, with Newgrange peaking just above 110 Hz. The authors described their equipment as basic, but the pattern was unmistakable: similar architectural features and similar low-frequency reinforcement across monuments separated by hundreds of miles and thousands of years. The pattern extends far beyond Europe. At Chavan de Huantar in the Peruvian Andes, Miriam Kohler and her team documented stone corridors deliberately shaped to amplify the sounds of ritual conch shells. Their work, published in 2019, confirmed that ancient builders engineered spaces to create powerful, focused resonances, often in the same low-bass range measured at the Hypogeum. A 2020 analysis by Wolf, Swanson, and Till took things further. By mapping the Hypogeum's three main resonance peaks, 41, 72, and 76 Hz, they found a whole tone spacing unlikely to occur by accident. Statistical modeling put the odds of such regularity arising by chance at less than 1 in 100. The implication is clear: the Hypogeum's acoustic effects are not some local quirk or accident of geology. They fit a global pattern of prehistoric sites deliberately constructed to manipulate sound, suggesting a shared architectural logic that official narratives have yet to acknowledge. Official narratives have barely budged, even as the evidence piles up. UNESCO's description still hedges, calling the Hypogeum a cemetery and suggesting, without citing any published study, that its acoustic features might be accidental. Heritage Malta, for all its technical reports and conservation work, continues to cap daily visitors at around 80, citing microclimate fragility, yet their public materials recycle the century-old burial count while omitting the acoustic findings from Rupert Till's 2017 antiquity paper. The same pattern repeats across guidebooks and travel sites. A ritual sound chamber is reduced to a burial statistic, while the most robust data, peer-reviewed, archived, and openly available, remains absent from the official story. The way forward is not complicated. First, update all public-facing descriptions to reflect the patella-based minimum of 120 individuals, with the 7,000 figure clearly labeled as a historic estimate. Second, require every institutional statement about the Hypogeum's function to cite published acoustic research, not just folklore or tradition. Third, make the full archive. Zamet's bone reports, Kasser and Gowder's 1992 survey, and Till's raw measurement logs openly accessible so the evidence can be scrutinized and tested. These are not radical demands. They are basic standards for any site that claims to represent world heritage. Until these steps are taken, the official story will remain out of sync with the evidence, and the Hypogeum's true significance will stay buried under a century of inertia. Today, UNESCO and Heritage Malta still label the Hypogeum a burial site, even as peer-reviewed studies, including work by Till in 2017 and others, prove its engineered acoustics. The evidence is published, accessible, and ignored. When institutions lag behind science, history itself remains unfinished. So, whose version are we still accepting?